Good evening. Welcome to another episode of HAC TV. Tonight we will be discussing domestic violence in our community, specifically with men. Um, the HAC is a driving force coalition whose main mission is to provide resources to our community and our allies. We are excited about the conversation that we're having tonight. Um, the HATC is a series of programs that we have put together so that we can bring resources amid this COVID-19 pandemic. We pray that everyone is safe and well, and we hope uh, that everyone will enjoy this conversation. Right now, we are going to be introducing our guest panelists tonight. We have Alvin Boucher, who is the CEO of the Boucher Group, and Gregory Mellon, who is an educator in New York City K through 12 system. Good evening, gentlemen. How you guys doing?
How are you, man? I'm well.
I'm doing well, sir. How are you?
Doing very well.
How are you? How you feeling, Elaine?
I am doing good. We are blessed to see another day. So I don't want to take up too much time. Let's jump right into it. Domestic violence is a topic that tends to be taboo in our community, the Caribbean community, especially the Haitian community, and it's even more difficult to discuss amongst men.
Yeah.
What are some of the hangups that you guys feel cause this uncomfortability with even discussing domestic violence?
I'll start. Again, my name is Gregory Mellon. I am a New York City school psychologist. I'm also a chapter representative on a state level representing New York City psychologists for the New York Association of School Psychologists. I think, Elisha, that this topic is very, very it's one for men that touches deep because I think on a deeper level, uh, you know, it culturally wise, men have a harder time in terms of emotion, understanding emotion, our emotions, managing our emotions, and oftentimes it's very difficult when you have those kind of difficulties to kind of see yourself for truly for who you are. And I think that the conversation on domestic violence trauma at its core also falls into an identity conversation. Alan?
Great question. I think a lot of times when I have kids come in and they exhibit certain violent behaviors in school, there's usually a DV case behind it, or like they've seen DV, or uh, their mother's actually a recipient of DV. It's an unfortunate truth, but a lot of times you kind of have to pull it out of them. So similar to what Mr. Mellon is saying, essentially, it's hard to get young men to talk about it. It's hard for men to talk about DV, just because I think overall we just have a problem with emoting and just having healthy confrontations with each other, where we can actually emote and speak our feelings about it. So the DV is definitely a tough thing for men to speak about.
And Alan, I love what you said because I think the conversation, even with you working with children and me working with children myself, I think, and maybe you can attest to this, oftentimes when we're dealing with children, and it's my job to make sure that children are progressing academically, making sure that they have everything they need to be successful students. And oftentimes we have to focus on the mental health of the student, and particularly the mental health of the student and what's going on at home. And I find myself as an adult quite often having conversations with my children, with my kids in school, saying, "Hey, How are you feeling? How did that make you feel? I think that's something we should talk about, right? Um, and then going to an adult my age, 35 years old, saying, bro, I think you should talk about this. I think you should express yourself. I say that to say there's a thin line between how children express themselves and how we think adults should understand and express their own feelings and emotions.
I think you touched on a few great points there, Gregory. And I think that from personal experience, some of the ways we were molded to express ourselves and to interact kind of carry us through childhood, adolescence, and into adulthood. I understand that both of you work with children and had to kind of rearrange your thinking. Albin, what were some of those uh, traits that you had to kind of let go of and cast aside so that you could properly deal within yourself before you can go in and help your students?
Great question. With all things, whenever you're dealing with very serious topics, you always have to check yourself. Check your ego at the door. One thing that I have to do constantly is always just kind of make sure that first, this isn't my child, right? A lot of times you get like a little overzealous and you get very passionate. You just have to realize that this isn't your child first off. Also, check your ego at the door. You don't have to always be right. You don't always have to say the right thing. And everybody has a viewpoint on the situation. So I think whenever approaching a DV situation or hearing about a DV situation in a young male, you can't really imagine the trauma that this young man is dealing with, seeing his mother getting hurt like that. You know what I mean? I mean, that's like a very serious thing. So you always want to tread lightly and just be very empathetic. My thing is check your ego at the door, be empathetic, and just be patient, hear him out.
Greg?
I think that it's very important. One of my favorite mentors, his name is Tyrone Stevenson. One of the most he's taught me a lot of things, and one of the things he loves to say, particularly when it comes to relationships, is that you need to get out the bed and have a conversation. There are things you will learn about somebody that are deeper than romance, deeper than anything that is physical and in your face. And getting to know somebody, I think as I got older, particularly as a man, and Alvin, you can attest to this, you know, with everything that's going on today, you start to understand yourself as a Black man. You start to understand yourself as a Black professional. And there's so many layers and shells that you have to remove off yourself that society says you are. And one of those things you do as an adult, particularly as a male, you have to get to the place where you have to remove yourself as a completely sexual being. You have an ego, you have thoughts, you have feelings, you have a desire to be successful. There are a ton of things that are fulfilling to a man that I think so much more precede what it is to be a man and an adult man in society. I think that's one of the major things I learned growing up as a male, and I think that's one of the reasons. I think that's one of the major problems with men today.
I agree. I think that is a great point. So, kind of pivoting back to the essence of the conversation, which is DV. How do you guys feel DV is addressed in the community? What are your feelings? Have you seen it? And how do you necessarily deal with it in your circle of influence?
So what I see when it comes to DV situations, a lot of times the male is kind of blocked off with it. I mean, the male is kind of not involved in a conversation. a lot of times the DV is surrounded around the female and just kind of the trauma that the female is facing. As far as in my community, I haven't really seen it addressed. Only when it comes from the female point of view, not necessarily the male's point of view. And I'm not talking about the abuser and the abusee, but I'm talking more of the kids that are viewing it. I haven't seen that kind of work with, dealing with those traumas and just kind of being a bystander of DV. When I say DV, I mean domestic violence. So everybody knows,
Yeah.
But we this is something that we don't talk about. Even now, it's kind of tough to talk about just because it's not a situation that's addressed. And also to keep in mind, DV, it can also lead into verbal abuse as well. I think DV should mean verbal abuse as well. Like there's a lot of verbal abuse that happens in the household on both sides, whether it's male or female.
Yeah.
And that was kind of where I wanted to kind of point the conversation is there are multiple different DV rears its head in multiple different forms. And I wanted to kind of figure out where do you see it? Because when you typically think of domestic violence, you think of a man beating a woman or a man verbally abusing a woman. How do you see it? And we want to discuss that as well, because as men, we want to be accountable for our brothers, for our friends, and we want to make sure that we have the resources and we can pick up on those red flags so we can hold our brothers and our friends and even ourselves accountable to some of those bad behaviors that we've presented in the past. So what are some, but to go back, we want to kind of have that conversation about what does domestic violence look like to a man? How do you see it presented? Man to woman, woman to man, a parent to son. Can you give me some examples that you guys have experienced in your life or as educators dealing with students?
Yeah. So I'm Haitian American, living in a Caribbean community. And, sometimes as men, we understand growing up that, some of the stuff is ingrained in our culture. It's cultural, how we speak to people, how we demean what they say, or, what is the value that we give to their words, to their thoughts. Those that level of disrespect is on a verbal scale, but it can escalate to how we putting your hands on somebody. I always refer it back to my children because working with children, you will always see pure interactions in the classroom. You'll see you'll see why is this young girl throwing hands on another girl or another boy. What is this violence about? Why is this young man completely outside of control? Why is he screaming? Why is he so angry? And oftentimes, not always, but oftentimes, you'll have a conversation about that with the parents, or you'll meet with a parent and you'll see some aspects of that child's personality in that parent. So sometimes it's there are some things with us as male that we need to dispel culturally. Sometimes it's just how we were raised. I was raised by a strong Haitian woman who endured a lot, graduated from a lot of pain. I'm very proud of the person that my mother is now. But growing up, I seen a lot of things as a child that I should not have seen. And certainly, my mom's experience is not, it's not singular. There are a lot of people, particularly in our community, who have seen these kind of things in our home. So I think a lot of it is cultural. And that kind of culture translates again into how we interact, how we communicate, the kind of value that we give to another person.
Albert?
It's tough. I'm pretty sure Mr. Mellon can agree. You kind of always have that one student who's just a little bit too aggressive with women. Like you're kind of like, yo, like, why are you grabbing her like that? Or like, why are you touching people like that? There was a situation when I was a dean of a school where we saw actually one of the students actually got arrested
Yeah.
because the mother pressed charges against the young male because he was a little too aggressive with her daughter. And
Yeah.
there were a lot of reports saying that after school he would like kind of like rough her up. After we learned that whole situation, we found out that that gentleman grew up in like a DV household.
Yeah.
So, I mean, the correlation is great. We see it on a daily basis. It's a very unfortunate situation, and it's going to take some work to kind of detangle the trauma that a lot of these young men are facing. A lot of these young men are witnessing at home.
Yeah, yeah, and people are probably watching this and they're wondering, Alan, why are we constantly bringing this conversation back? Almost to a childhood perspective, or speaking about young boys. And the truth of the matter is that there are a lot of people, male or female, who look like adults. They have adult functions. They have adult body parts. They say adult cuss words. They smell like adults, good and bad. And but the level of maturity inside of them, the level of emotional development and trauma inside of them is something extremely immature. And I don't, I, you know, I don't want anyone to kind of misconstrue what we're saying in terms of there's a reason for domestic violence or this is the cause. But it really is it really is, Alan, what we tell our children. We teach our children that they have to take responsibility for their emotions. They have to take responsibility for what they think, how they say it. We teach that to them. And you see the consequences of a child who hasn't learned that. You see what they look like as an adult. We know some of these people, male and female, the ways that people express themselves as an adult is synonymous to how how they were growing up. And it's not an excuse. Everyone needs to take responsibility, and that responsibility, even as an adult, we have to look men right in the face and say, yo, you're immature, you're a loser. I wouldn't say you're a loser. Well, I might if I was angry. I might. I'm not gonna lie. But you have to call it out and say, listen, this is immature thinking. This is immature feelings. And this is a level of expression that shouldn't happen anymore. And you are doing it. There's a level of shame, and as males, we like to shame each other a little bit into growth, but it's not the best way. But we do it often. But after that level of surface conversation, and a real conversation as to why we operate like this.
Yeah, kind of just to piggyback on the shaming shaming kids to achieve what you think they want, what you want them to achieve. I think, I mean, I agree that approach is outdated. I don't need, these kids don't need somebody calling them a loser or calling them like an idiot to kind of like coax them into changing the results of the trauma that these kids face on a daily basis. I think I think the biggest word or the biggest phrase I'm learning is healthy confrontation, right? How can you express or how can you emote your feelings or how you're feeling in a healthy way? A lot of times we see it with a chair thrown at them, right? You know what I'm saying? You turn the TV on, you go to Love and Hip Hop, or you go to the news and you see a lot of unhealthy confrontations. I think what a lot of young black men need to learn, or like a lot of black men or just people in general, just to have a healthy confrontation, just a healthy conversation, a place where you can really emote and just understand where the other person's coming from. Easier said than done.
Yeah, for sure. And how do you coach your students through that?
Oh man, I'm definitely not gonna sit here and say I have the playbook, But the way I coach them through is, first off, I try to put them in a position of ease, right? A lot of times these kids are tense, you know what I mean? They're tense, they're hot, you know what I'm saying? Like they just got their bacon, egg, and cheese from the store, you know, like they got gym class, or like they're just hot and like, you know, they just want to play around and like pull a girl's hair or something, right? So what I try to do is just calm them down and say, hey, think about what you just did. Was that the smartest thing you've done, or was that the worst thing you've done? And like that kind of, you know, just kind of being that way, just really putting them in a driver's seat and just kind of making them the owner of their decisions, whether it's right or wrong, and just kind of making them see where they went wrong in their reaction or in their actions. So it's definitely difficult because a lot of different people, I mean, people are people. They feel a different way. They may be feeling like this one day, feeling like that another. So it all depends on the approach. But the best way to approach people, or the best way to approach young men, when I do, is just put them at ease, let them know like, hey, it happened, it's over. How can we fix it and prevent it from happening again?
Okay, great. And Greg, I just asked Alvin, what are some of the methods he uses to counteract some of those bad behaviors?
I mean, there are a lot of different mental health techniques to reach students, you know. But I think the most, and I think I caught the end of what Alan was saying, but I think the one of the most successful methods of trying to get a student to understand their behavior is teaching empathy on a regular basis, teaching empathy, teaching transparency between men. Particularly between men. I'm blessed to be, you know, to be friends with men who you know, our entire friendship is honed on transparency, on honesty, on telling the truth, and bringing that to the forefront. And I think that, you know, as adults, as adult males, it's very hard to learn. And I'm grateful, you know, that I'm in a position, and Alan is in a position to teach young boys and young you know, young men about this, because I think all in all, this is it's a game changer when it comes to men. Being transparent, being
go ahead, Greg.
No, I'm done.
Speaking of transparency and accountability, a meme that I like that I see online a lot of times is, how come almost every woman knows someone who's been abused, but every man doesn't know an abuser? How are we holding each other accountable? How are we seeing these red flags? And how do you deal with the thought of that?
Sure. Who's first?
So I don't, you know, I think I'm guilty in that, because honestly, right now,
tell the truth, my brother.
Right now, I don't know of any of my male friends that are abusive towards women, but I could be wrong, right? So what it sounds like is that there's a code of silence here. There's a code of like, don't ask, don't tell, and nobody's talking about it. It seems like I would be very naive to the fact that this is happening, and I'm pretty sure, and I know it is. I see it every day when I'm working with these kids. But yeah, there is definitely a code of silence when it comes to that. I mean, it is an embarrassing, toxic trait. The fact that when you're upset, you lash out and you hurt a woman.
Yeah,
it's unfortunate, but yeah, it is a don't ask, don't tell situation when it comes around DV.
Yeah. Alan, no, I agree that also that there is a code. There's a code of silence. I want to say, you know, not all communities are the same. I wouldn't say that for the most part. And I totally agree. I do believe that there's a code of silence. I think there's a code of silence, you know, for men, you know, who are not interested in maturing and growing. You know, somebody like Elisha and Albin, you know, you guys seem accountable to other men. You seem accountable to your mistakes. And I'm pretty sure if one of your brothers spoke to you, you tell them the truth, like this is what happened, right? But I think to add to what you said, Alvin, I think also that there is one of the reasons we don't always see it is because it's some of the same reasons that we are who we are. Alvin is a um, Albin is a father. He's a worker. He's a business owner. We are layered as human beings. We're not just one person, right? And one of the things I learned, and Albin could tell you, you could be the calmest person in the world, and let's say your daughter gets you mad, or your wife or your girlfriend gets you mad. You might something's gonna come out of you that you've never seen before. You might have a reaction to something that you've never seen before, right? And Alvin, I really believe that people, I may know you as a business owner, I may know you as a world changer, but I don't know you in a relationship. I don't know how you are romantically. I don't know the things that has formed your love language. I don't know the things that has formed your identity and your visual when it comes to healthy relationships, right? So who my boy is, who my friend is, my brother is, as my friend, that might now be the same person when he is in a romantic relationship. That is very different. I'm not going to see him in that capacity. I'm not going to see how he handles issues that touch to his core, because I don't touch him in that way. I don't have a romantic relationship with him. We don't, but his wife does, his girlfriend does, and he may have some feelings that I will never be able to see. So I think it's just, in our society, we try to approach things as if it's easy to see, but really we're complex beings. And I think it is vastly important to know that as human beings, who you are from just from your identity, who you are as a father, just like a father won't be the same person as they are to their daughter. How you treat your daughter is not how you're going to treat your wife. It's very, very different. Understanding who you are romantically and understanding who you are as a platonic friend. Very different.
To add on to that, to add on to that, in order, I think, for men, in order to truly understand every layer, similar to what you said, there's a level of work that you have to do on yourself.
Yeah.
You really kind of have to put the mirror in front of yourself and say, hey, I'm not the best in this area, but I'm good in this. Or I'm not good here, but I need to work on this. That work is daunting. A lot of times, a lot of men, a lot of people, just to face yourself in the mirror and say, yo, I'm not as good as I think I am, and I need work. I need help. So it's tough to really truly understand each layer, but it's so essential to really understand who you are in different situations, because that can prevent you a lot of headaches and possibly for us some jail time.
I
Absolutely.
think I definitely want to address the fact of our melanin.
Melanin. I thought you were saying my hashtag.
But
Get it right,
to
bro.
but to kind of circle back to the question, how we typically like to catch red flags in other areas of our life. In business partnerships, we look for red flags when we're meeting, when we sit down for dinner, sit down for coffee. With our personal relationships, professional relationships, we are constantly looking for red flags to see, is this person who they're presenting? How are we taking that into our friendships and our family to hold our friends accountable and our family accountable? Because Greg, I understand there is an aspect of, yes, we're not in that part of their life, but abusers don't tend to not be able to hide those behaviors well. So how are we looking to catch those red flags so that we can then hold those people accountable?
It takes work. It takes work. And that's probably um, one of the things I'm most proud of as a man is, as I've gotten older, the quality of my friendships have improved. The level of accountability has improved, and you know, you go from conversations as a young man, like saying, um, "Yo, how she look though? Yo, she looks great. She looks amazing. You know, she's bad, right?" And older conversations, as I've gotten older, the conversations are, does, does she listen to you? Can she have a conversation? Can she call you out when you're talking BS? You know, um, it's relationships, friendships, romantic relationships. They need to you have a responsibility as a person to make sure that you're not just surrounded by um, inconsequential relationships. You have to have accountability around you. You have to have people around you um, who who care about the person that you are, not the person you think you are. Not the perfect man specimen that we walk around thinking we are. God's gifts to the earth, right? No, we need to have relationships around us that do that. Outside of that, Elisha, it's very difficult. It takes work. It takes work for any man to have a very serious, transparent, and um, uh, empathetic relationship with anyone, a man, woman, their mother, their father, um, you know, and to be frank, something we were touching on earlier, Alvin, the society that we live in doesn't make it easy, with the level of trauma every other day that we experience as Black males on a regular basis. What is it? Four incidents
violence or
of violence against.
violence, racism, in the
So
last.
now we're here. So now we've arrived. Now this
Yes,
is
we've
This
arrived.
has happened.
yeah.
This has happened in over a week, right? And here's my thing, right? We'll have, as males, you know, Alvin, Elisha, we're professionals. We internalize this. We're gonna move on. We're not gonna let this break us, right? But the truth is, this affects us in a deep way. It affects not only us but our children. Our children who's looking at a screen and watching someone their color in danger, and it's fine, and it happens profusely. It happens constantly, right? The problem is that you can't then experience something like that and then say, it doesn't matter. I got a date next week. I gotta, what I mean? I gotta go see, a woman. I gotta go, I gotta see a chick. Like, we can no longer live in a society. And I think we're there. We can no longer live in a society where we treat male trauma, specifically Black male trauma, as if it's inconsequential and it doesn't matter, because it's just not the truth.
And Albin, I'm going to let you go. But Greg, to that point, how do we get men to treat their trauma like it's important? Because what tends to happen is men will treat that trauma like it's inconsequential, and the people surrounding them will see that and act accordingly. So how are we to start those conversations so that the trauma that men are experiencing, the trauma that Black men specifically are experiencing, and not and trauma in the seeing of men being killed, but also seeing our sisters, they are being treated in a way that isn't ideal. How do we get men to act like these traumas are of importance? Albin?
Well, a part of me, I think working in education, and I think Melon would agree. A part of me is saying that we can't force people to do what they don't want to do, right? Like a lot of times men during a breakup, that's when a lot of them start doing like soul seeking. It's gonna take something very traumatic for them to really confront their fears or confront whatever's going on internally. That's really what's gonna have to happen, unfortunately. But if we are in a position or I'm sorry, if we are in a controlled environment, what we have to do is we have to make this look cool. We have to make looking emoting as though like that's something that's just healthy.
Yeah.
I'm pretty sure Mr. Mellon does that on a daily basis, right? He probably has
I be in
small
my feelings
groups.
all
Oh
the
yeah,
time, brother. I be in
yeah,
my
for
feelings.
sure. You
No
know,
joke.
you you have to have the small groups. You have to have the one-on-ones. You know what I mean? When the kid is upset and he's flipping the table across, you know what I mean? And it's only Mr. Mellon can talk to this kid, right? Only Mr. Mellon can get this kid off the ledge. The principal's like, "Where's Mr. Mellon? I don't care if he's on lunch. Get him in the building. This kid's about to jump out of the wall," right? That's when it takes, it takes those places and it takes those like, really extreme examples for a child to trust you and for a child to truly emote with you. Um,
Yeah.
and it really comes down to consistency and making an environment very comfortable where this kid can talk. A lot of
Yeah.
times you can see like the kid who's been arrested a few times, and he's like, I only want to speak to Mr. Pierre. I'm not talking to anybody else. If Mr. Pierre's here, it's going to be a good day. You know what I'm saying?
Yeah.
But if Mr. Pierre's absent,
Yeah. Yeah.
red
No, I get it.
flag.
Yeah.
It's going up.
Oh,
Agreed.
yeah.
Agreed.
So it's
Agreed.
it's it's that, and also I don't know if you guys have experienced that, Mr. Mellon, but it is definitely a power for a black man in education to have that, right? A lot of times you become the guy, you become the peacemaker, you
Yeah.
become the de-escalator, you know what I'm saying? And a lot of times you're
Yeah.
just like, yo, I just want to teach, or I just want to like lead my small groups. But you end
Yeah.
up becoming, you know, I'm thinking
Yeah.
about a name to call a kid, but like you end up becoming that guy who talks to this kid all the time, right? The kid
Yeah.
who's setting
Yeah.
classrooms on fire. Mr. Mellon, can you just please talk to him today? Because he's acting up today. I don't know
That's
how else
true.
to do it, but we need you.
That's true.
A lot of
That's true.
times it's a power, but it's also across the bear. Because,
Yeah.
I went to school too. I'm trying to grow as a teacher. I want to grow as a
Yeah.
psychologist. Why am
Yeah.
I being called into the lunchroom to remove chairs from a kid who's about to launch it at the lunch lady? I don't know.
Right.
Like I'm actually prepping my lesson. Why do I have to go and extinguish another fire? So
Yeah. Yeah.
it's a gift and a
Yeah.
church, a gift and a curse. Uh, but I relish it, man. I think when you're in these schools and you're dealing with this energy, you know what I'm saying? This isn't a textbook, you know. This isn't like a school. Like this isn't like college. This is the real deal. These kids are dealing with real issues. They're seeing real things on a daily basis. These kids are being chased. These kids are being harassed. These women are being uh, pursued. These men are being called in different directions. Different peer pressures. It's a real ecosystem that I wish a lot of people could experience because it's very interesting. I enjoy it very
Yeah.
much.
Yeah. Yeah. Alvin,
1,000%.
I agree with you. I would say, did you want me to continue,
No,
Alex?
no, yes, continue, please.
I, two really important things. And I love what Alvin said. To add to what he said, um, I think that one, as a male, um, first before I even say that, you know, women, women are, in my opinion, God's gift to men. They're phenomenal. And one of the things that we have to learn, and I love that me and Alvin, we keep bringing the conversation back to a young child, a young girl, a young boy, and what it is that we know about ourselves, and how we hone our emotions as a child, informing who we are as an adult. And one of the things we have to, particularly men, you have to, you get to a place where you learn that as a male, you have to be self-sufficient, right? We learn this when it comes to money, right? We learn that, listen, you gotta make this money, you gotta bring this bread home. We learn this, no questions asked. You don't even have to have a father, and you learned this as a young man. You got to make this money. But one of the things we have to learn and be accountable for is our own emotions. We have to have accountability in how we feel, understanding that, building that language within ourselves, and being able to express that. Because women are not our garbage cans. They're not garbage cans. We can't just drop things whenever we want without us processing them, without us understanding them. And I think growing up, particularly understanding my mom, particularly understanding women and friends, they're used to men just dumping things on them and us not understanding. So I think, to answer your question, Elijah, there needs to be a culture of men understanding that women are more than garbage cans emotionally, right? We have to take responsibility for what we feel. And damn, I don't know what was I going to say. And the next thing that I was going to say, I remember it. The next thing I was going to say was that the way to change this is exactly what we're doing right now. It needs to be more common that men, just like young boys can get on a screen and turn on TV and see a person, their color and their gender being assaulted or their lives being completely devalued. They need to be able to get on a screen and look at Albin and look at Elijah saying to themselves, you know what, I didn't handle this situation properly. I reacted in a way that was inappropriate. I thought my anger was about this and it really was about that. I spoke to her in a way that was so disrespectful. They need to see men being honest about what they experience, who we are, and they need to see men, traumatic men like us who deal with things on a regular basis. There's so much power in seeing somebody who has traumatic issues, have dealt with a lot, but you also watch them overcome it. You watch them be better, So I think those two things, Elisha, need to happen. One, understanding that we're responsible for our emotions before anyone else, before a woman, before a man, for another man. We have to take responsibility for the communication that's happening on the inside of us. And we have to make it a norm. Seek out the level of transparency and empathy that you want to see in your life. And I think when young children see that, when young boys specifically see that, young men grow up to be better people.
And Alvin, before you respond, we're going to be moving into the question and answer portion right after Alvin's response. So if anyone in the comment section wants to send any questions in, we're going to be taking questions immediately following Alvin's response. Alvin?
Can you just say the prompt again?
No, I was saying that we're going to be taking questions and answers shortly, right after your response. So if you wanted to respond to Greg, then afterwards we'll be taking questions from the comment section.
I think Greg kind of wrapped it up perfectly. I have nothing else to add.
All right, perfect. So some of the questions that we've had are we have some pretty amazing questions. So
I don't think I'm ready.
Nadu too blessed. She asks, I would like to know from a man's perspective, why do some men batter women? What is happening with them internally?
Can I answer that?
Absolutely.
All right. So great question. There's obviously some trauma, right? And the abuse is an offspring of that trauma that's happening with this young person or whatever. We don't know if the gentleman has seen this growing up. We don't know if this is just a frustration type of tactic, right? Like, this gentleman is just very upset and only thing he knows is, you know what I mean? We don't know what it is. You know,
or it could be intimidation, or it could be a tool. But that's another
that too.
conversation. It's another conversation.
Right. All in all, what it takes for me to be calm, and what happens when I'm calm and to the point where I'm actually abusing a woman, a lot of that is a lot of ego, right? A lot of the times, like, you may feel like somebody stepping your toes, or, you know, a woman may have said something wrong to you, or like the gentleman may have took it the wrong way, or you just might have had a bad day. We don't know what's happening with this person internally. This could be a pattern of behavior that this gentleman saw growing up. But all in all, I believe that this circles around ego and non-empathy. I don't know if this is news to the world, but men have egos for whatever reason. We do have pride. We do want to be heard. We do want to be respected. When these things are not in place, if we're not trained, or if we haven't done the work, we just react. So, yeah, it's a lot of ego going on.
Yeah.
Internally.
Yeah.
Ego. It is the fall of many great men.
Yeah, absolutely.
Ruth Jean Marie asks, how do we engage with our children and men when we know the situation is so multi-level?
You know what? I think that question in and of itself is amazing, because, first you have to get to the place. First you have to get to the place where you understand that we are multi-level. Can you guys hear me?
Yes.
Okay. Can you guys hear me?
Greg, we can hear you, yes.
We can hear you.
Okay. You have to get to the place and first understand that we are multi-level. So understanding that what you see in front of you, that the male, the beard, the wonderful beard that Alvin has, chocolate skin and all of that, that's just that's just a person. And understanding who that person is, how they think, how they respond to stress. I won't say that. That's another topic. But
stress kills, man.
You have to really look at somebody intentionally and not treat them as if you would treat yourself. We have a tendency to want to treat somebody like we treat ourselves, which is not terribly bad, but particularly when it comes to relationships, we have a higher responsibility to look at that person from every angle that they are showing, not just the ones you want to see, every angle. How do they respond to this? What did they say to that? What are their thoughts on this? That informs who or what kind of person they are. So just the fact that we know that we have to approach young boys, young girls, women, men, adults as multi-level, multifaceted people is an advancement in and of itself, just from our parents, who just, make the money, come home, nothing's a problem, put food on the table, and that's that. I'm very happy that we're much more advanced in the way we approach it.
Definitely.
Okay. Now, we spoke a lot about the mental aspect of domestic violence. We spoke about the youth and adolescents. We spoke about men on women. Sam Pierre asks, why would a woman who's 120 pounds try to beat a 220-pound heavyweight champion of the world? Why would she think it's okay to try to fight him?
I have no idea, man. He, I don't know.
Unfortunately, because we both know Sam Pierre,
right?
we know that this is it. It's not a funny topic, but
I'm sorry.
No, 1000%. Because I know him, I know we tend to try to mask important things or things that are a little bit uncomfortable in some humor. So for me, I have friends who have been victims of their girl smacking them in front of me.
Mm.
And
You know,
and so how would you, and I know in me addressing it, it was in my younger years, I always looked to him as soft and never looking to her as an abuser and him being the abused. What do you think? Now, we want to answer Sam's question, but we also want to kind of talk about our own mentality and creating a safe space for men that we see and don't see are abused.
what I'm realizing a lot in my practice and dealing with people in relationships is that everybody has a trigger. Everybody has a point that they reach where like they just kind of go off the grail and they just kind of react. A lot of times what I'm doing, a lot of the work I'm doing in my relationships is just being more cognizant of people's triggers, being more intentional with not hitting those triggers and just respecting everybody's space and everybody's desire to kind of do what they choose to do. With that being said, if a 120-pound woman wants to attack a 220-pound man, a black man at that, uh, that's really not the best way to confront whatever you're dealing with internally. That's not the best way to have a conversation. It's unfortunate that this person thinks like that, where like your first reaction is to hit a person. But yeah, there's a lot of repeated behavior that this person had to see in order for them to react like that, in my personal opinion.
No, 1000%. And so what do you? So not only so for Greg, for you, we were talking about the mental the mental space that a woman or would be in to attack a man, and we're also talking about how do we create the safe space for men who are in those situations. So it's kind of a twofold question.
Yeah. Uh, I'm glad you asked this because it touches on something that I was thinking before. Uh, one of the things I experience, in my friendship life, in my dating life, serious relationships, talking to friends, is that one thing we do in our culture today is we get in relationships way too fast. Like we move very fast when it comes to things, right? And I look at it as like, speed limits. We're going 20, we're going 30, we're going 40, we're going 50, you know, and you're missing stop signs, you're missing turns, you're missing signs that says this and says that. I think one of the things we do entirely, what we need, I think one of the things we need to do when it comes to relationships is slow down and really get to know this person that we're dealing with. Um, uh, you know, get out of the bed. Um, you know, things like sex complicates things. Things like romantic relationships very much complicates things in our emotions. And it skews our judgment. Well, he gets angry, but he doesn't get that angry. Or you know what? She is so cute, but she ripped on my Jordans. Or, she threw my Xbox. I said Xbox. I said Xbox. Jesus. She threw my PS. She threw my gaming system across the room. She's so cute. I love her. Like, pause. Hold on, buddy. We do things. We approach relationships way too cavalierly. There are ways, intentional ways to see who this person is, grow with this person on different levels. How does this person feel? How does this person manage conflict? When they're stressed out, how do they see themselves? How do they respond? You need sometimes you need to watch someone go through something and watch how they respond, and be supportive, be a friend, and see all aspects, the multifaceted level of that person. I really think, Elijah, that is one of the safest places to be when it comes to romantic relationships. Albin, it's very similar to how we raise our children. Another thing we can't do is raise children cavalierly. We can't approach motherhood, and there's no relationship in our lives that we can approach cavalierly. Not raising a child properly is the difference between, a mad child in 20 years, or the president of the United States. Similarly, so when you're making decisions about your relationship, there needs to be some intentionality in what's important to you. What are your no-goes? What are some things that you can't accept? What are the things, quite frankly, some people don't even know what they're looking for, Elijah. They can't even make that list. They just know, listen, I need them to make my eyes happy and my private parts happy. That's about it. That's all I care about. And that's just not true when it comes to relationships. At least today, I think we understand, like the previous question, we're much more multifaceted people.
That wonderful response. Thank you for that. Gentlemen, I think that this conversation could go on for hours. There's much that we didn't touch on that I would have loved to touch on. We appreciate the experience that you brought to the conversation, and we hope that we can continue the conversation across all of our platforms. I want to take the next few minutes to kind of get your information, let everyone know how they can reach you. Greg?
My name is Gregory Mellon. Gregory L. Mellon is my whole name. My Haitian mother gets very angry when I don't use the L. My social media on Instagram is melanated. Again, I am a chapter representative that represents New York City psychologists, of course, the state of New York, but I represent New York City specifically. I'm very happy to represent New York City psychologists. And an email for us is nyc@nyasp.org, NYASP, nyc@nyasp.org.
Thank you. Albin?
Excellent. Once again, thank you, Mr. Pierre, Mr. Mellon, for being a part of this great conversation. Once again, my name is Albin Boucher. I'm an educator. I'm also the founder of the Boucher Group. You can find me on Instagram at the Boucher Group. My personal Instagram is at Commissioner Boucher. I really appreciate this conversation. Let's keep this conversation going.
Absolutely.
Thank you, gentlemen. And we would like to thank our sponsors, Verizon, the August Project. HAC TV is grateful for everyone who participated in the comments, who watched the video. We pray that anyone, if you know someone in the situation, to use the resources that are available to you. We will link some resources in the comment section below. Thank you and have a great night.
Thank you.